Hi guys, so I'm Vinay. I head up public sector and financial sector over at WeShape. I'm sure many of you probably already know a little bit about WeShape, but to provide a little bit more context, we're a tech consultancy, award-winning, and we specialize in DevOps, software engineering, cloud native solutions, and obviously most importantly for this webinar, data. So yeah, we've done a lot of work around sort of data governance, data architecture, data migration, particularly from legacy software in the public sector, and a lot on the power platforms in the private sector. So if anyone does want to have a sort of conversation, or it's something that resonates with you, there's interest there, do drop me a message. I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat, or if you just want to have a quick conversation around sort of market trends on that side of things, it'd be great to hear from you as well. But yeah, that's just my piece on WeShape.
Perfect. Thank you, Vinny. Thanks for your time. And yeah, please reach out to Vinny if you're interested in hearing more about WeShape. Cheers, Vin. But now we're going to be bringing onto stage Masha. Just a quick reminder, any questions that you want to ask, put them in the chat. If you want to be brought on stage to ask a question and be on screen like I am now, then also let me know within the chat. I'll be monitoring that very, very closely. Let us know where you're watching from today. And I hope you enjoy the show. Masha, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Masha. And thanks so much for joining this webinar. Very excited to share my experience in terms of building the data strategy. Just a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Russia. I grew up in Tyumen, Siberia. So there's some snow-covered trees over there. And I got my first degree in Tyumen in international relations. Also lived for a while in Germany as an exchange student. I then moved to Calgary, Canada, where I got my degree in psychology. Calgary is a cowboy town, so there's some like horses, and my university in Calgary. I then moved to beautiful Vancouver in Canada, so there's the nice beach over there, where I got my PhD in political science. And this is where my journey with data sort of began, because I was using large amounts of data for my thesis, and I got to teach research methods in political science to the undergraduates, and this is sort of my journey began. I then got a job in London in UK, and we moved here in 2015 at the House of Commons as a data visualization and statistics lead. And that's where, you know, it really got properly into data and visualizations. I then worked as a data science mentor for a company called Decoded, with the largest client was UBS. Then I got into the world of media, working for Essence Mediacom, formerly known as Essence, and I was leading the Universal Pictures account as an analytics director. And now currently I work as a global head of data and analytics at Spark Foundry, which is a publicist company. And ironically, again, one of our major clients is UBS, but we also work with Meta and Miele. And just over there in the corner is my partner, and we have a couple of kids. And in our spare time, we love to play board games. So there's the Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is one of our favorite ones. And now, just sort of what are we going to cover today? We'll talk about stages of working with data and building the data strategy. We'll talk about whether data is actually represented on the board level, and how to get the board excited about data and really build that data culture in the organization. We'll talk about the best setup of your analytics/AI data science sort of data teams. And also I have a few examples of how to feed the data into the decision-making within an organization. And as Luke mentioned before, please pop your questions into the chat, and we'll go through them at the end of the webinar. So, stages of working with data. I'm sure that these are all quite familiar to you, but I just wanted to kind of start with the basics. And the first stage is obviously, and also these are the stages of working with data on any scale, on the small scale, or laying out the whole data strategy for your organization or for your client. So the first stage is gathering stakeholder requirements. So obviously understanding what are the passions, what are the problems, what are the decisions that your stakeholders making, and how can data really help them make better decisions. Then the next step is finding the right data. So sort of working out what data you actually have access to, what data or who holds the access to that data. Is there enough data actually to answer the questions, or do you need to go to the third-party providers to collect it? The next stage is really digging into it. So this is where your sort of exploratory data analysis comes in and starting to build the pipelines to kind of clean and validate the data and really understand what's going on with that. The next stage is obviously building your prototype. Once you've looked at the data and matched it with the questions and the problems, you build the prototype and iterate the feedback with stakeholders. Then all the fun and good stuff after that, sort of scaling and roll out, finalizing documentation and support. Then you go to monitoring and maintenance and the post-implementation review. And so at this stage, my question to you is, which one of these do you think takes the longest out of these stages? And there is an interaction currently in place. There is a poll. You can tick off as many as you want, but please don't tick off more than 3. All right. So we've got a bit of a distribution of opinions. I see we've got 40% gathering stakeholder requirements, 30% finding the right data, 40% building and iterating the feedback. So a few scaling and rollout, a few monitoring and maintenance. So nobody voted for digging into the data. So that's all. That's quite in line actually with my experience. So let me just go back to the content. And so in my experience, the first 2, which you guys also chose, or quite a few of you have chosen, they combine, they can actually take up to more than 50% of the time of the whole project, even though there's only 2 of them. And what's the other tricky bit about them is that at any point of time in sort of laying out your data strategy or working on a project, on any scale, like large scale or small scale data project, you can actually get thrown back into those 2. So sometimes when you're digging into the data, you figure out that actually the data is wrong, it's invalid, or there is not enough of it. So you have to go back to finding the right data. Sometimes, and hopefully it doesn't happen at the scaling and rollout, but it can happen at any stage. Hopefully not at the post-implementation review, but again, can happen at any time. But you could be at the rollout stage, and then it turns out that some stakeholders are a little bit late to the party. So you're back to the gathering the stakeholder requirements, and then you have to start it all over again. So when you're sort of laying out your data strategy, really be prepared to and kind of put in the time in your plan to be able to kind of go back to those requirements. And because they are kind of so fundamental, I think that these are the foundation of a successful data strategy. So if you actually understand your stakeholder requirements, and if you understand the sort of data landscape that's available to you, these are the building blocks. And I think to get those 2 right, half of the job done, basically. Easier said than done, though. So in terms of now let's talk about how is the data representation on board. So do board members actually use data to make strategic decisions? So here we have a few things. We have theory. So according to a survey of UK CEOs, 74% of them believe that people analytics is imperative for making strategic decisions. And then there was another study done recently in the 17 countries around the globe, which says that actually 97%, almost all of the business leaders actually want help from data. So that's our theory. However, in reality, 72% of those said CEOs from 17 countries admit that the sheer volume of data and their lack of trust in data actually has stopped them from making any decision using data at all. And then there's this other commonly spread phenomenon, which I've seen in many organizations working with different clients, also working myself like kind of on the client side of the House of Commons, which is called death by data. And sort of, in terms of that, there is so much data that people just don't know which source to use. Sometimes they're contradictory. And 89% of the business leaders believe that the growing number of data sources has actually limited the success of their organization. What about my own experience? In my own experience, that majority of boards make their decisions using gut feeling, and I've never seen a board meeting where any machine learning results have been used. And charts and graphs kind of rarely make it to the board meetings. But when they do, I mean, that was at least my experience, but when they do, often they're kind of looked at the very end. So when all the strategic decisions have been made, then it's like, all right, let's look at some graphs. But, the train is gone. The decisions have been made. So there are some consequences, though, of ignoring the data, right? And I'm sure you know all these examples, but I just thought of to bring it up to life a bit. But we have Yahoo, whose executives have several chances to buy Google. However, the CEO and the executives believed that Yahoo's search algorithms was superior to Google, and where's Yahoo now and where's Google now? Same with Blockbuster. The executive and the CEO believed that that streaming is no competitor to the brick and mortar stores. Again, went bankrupt. I have another example also of Peloton, because Blockbuster is an example of ignoring the sort of the digital age. But Peloton, they obviously went quite big during the lockdowns. And then, they had a really aggressive sort of overexpansion and overreach, ignoring the fact that lockdowns were over and people were going back to the gyms. And sort of that really bit them as well. In terms of their share drops and company success. So there is some dire consequences of ignoring the data, actually. And so how do we actually get the board properly excited about the data and actually get them to use it? And it starts right with the board and kind of how do we build that data culture in the organization? So first of all, I think we're talking about the board, right? But actually it's comprised of individual members. It's comprised of individuals who are responsible for different parts of an organization. And so often they have quite conflicting priorities. So you need to work really closely with each member of the C-suite to understand what are their needs and what are their priorities and what are their problems and passions. And because you can have, for example, somebody who is responsible for innovation, who will be quite keen about investing into data and AI and everything. And you can have another person who is responsible for making efficiencies. And even though, innovation leads to efficiencies, but it comes with a pretty hefty upfront cost. And so that person may be quite against, the sort of the priorities of the innovation board member. And then you can have somebody who just cares about the sales, for example, and they don't care about anything else. And so you really need to you need to map out what are the priorities of each individual board member and how can data help them in their specific area. And where possible, do try to bring them together. It could be baby steps. It could be quite small sort of steps at first to seek an alignment between them. So sort of try to get to them to agree on certain things. But at the same time, you do need to work individually. But in terms of the alignment, like this will really help you sort of get a buy-in for your data strategy from all of them, if they're kind of all aligned, at least on something. And really, you need to work with them to understand how they actually want to see the data. How often do they want to see the data? Depending on their sort of comfort and trust with data. Maybe they want to really dig into the numbers and see the raw data. Maybe they want just the high level stuff. And this sort of what kind of a question. So you really need to understand how they want to see it and and really kind of understand how it will feed into their decision making. And of course, manage expectations. So do set realistic goals and timelines. Do not overpromise and underdeliver. And be really careful about all the dependencies that fall into your data strategy. So, access to data can take months to get, or collecting the data and kind of matching the different data sources together. So all of that can really affect your timelines. And this is how you sort of, by managing expectation, but also using any kind of use cases you have to build that trust is really important to understand the value of your data strategy. And then a few examples from me. Never underestimate the power of descriptive statistics. So at the House of Commons, I worked with senior House of Commons board leadership, but also I've worked closely with MPs who kind of like by their personality type, they kind of represent, I think, senior execs quite a bit. And the descriptive visualizations, descriptive statistics, and interactive visualizations really brought the data to life and really sparked the interest. So I worked in the scrutiny unit there, and our goal was to actually get MPs excited about scrutinizing government spending plans. And there, at the bottom, the thing that kind of looks like the visualization that looks a little bit like a tree. It's the government spending plans for different departments that go down into the programs to see sort of which programs are getting higher amount of money, which programs are getting less. And that really helped us get MPs to be more interested and more active in scrutinizing government accounts. And the other example is, do not shy away from infographics. This was my example of a build with PowerPoint, but it got picked up by BBC Kent. It was about a lorry park the size of Disneyland. But, use powerful visuals, obviously without tracking away from the data, but especially with people who are not particularly data savvy, this can kind of help bring the point down for them and help them work with their own stakeholders. So yeah, even though bar charts, in theory, they are the most easy to understand, but people can get a little bit tired of bar charts and pages of them. So bring it to life a little bit. Now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the skills balance of the data teams. And so I call them data teams, but they can be used, analytics, data science, AI, consultants, teams. But in my experience, I've hired for analytics and data teams, and I just wanted to share a bit with you. And so there's different, obviously, skills that we have. We have some technical skills, like these are just the groups of different skills. So we have technical skills, obviously your, knowledge of languages, knowledge of coding languages, machine learning algorithms, and different platforms. You have analytical skills, which include sort of hypothesis testing, experiments, and statistics and probabilities. Then we also have project and process management skills, so obviously managing the projects overall, and mindset and ethics, which I'll talk about shortly, as well as business and stakeholder engagement skills. So that's all that link to the other bits of organizations, or to the clients, depending on your organization. And my first bit of advice, that if you have budget and if you have that sort of opportunity, invest into a good project manager, because this will make an enormous difference to your data team's impact and outputs. Working with the good project manager, it really helps to bring the head down into the numbers and coding people. It helps them link them with the rest of the organizations, because it depends on the organizations, but I've seen quite a large number of organizations kind of working within them or working with the clients, where data and analytics team just sits in its own bubble and kind of does not communicate very well with the rest of the organization. So breaking that sort of divide and bringing the project manager really helps elevate the outputs. And it also it helps the head of the data team as well, because as a head of the data team, you're responsible for running of the projects as well. And so it really helps to bring the head of data out of the day-to-day checking on the projects and into more strategic initiatives. And it's another pair of eyes. So there's good project managers, there are bad project managers. So a good one will make it's like heaven and hell, basically. It's a huge impact. In terms of the technical and analytical skills, I would say that some of the most valuable and impactful skills that I have encountered, in the teams are actually the good old understanding of statistics and probabilities. Because a solid understanding of statistics and probabilities will help your data professionals, you will help your data team to create something that's not just, sort of out of a box foundational, this machine learning algorithm does that. They can go under the hood. They can really understand, which method works better and which parameters they should tweak, because they really have an understanding of it. And if that person is eager to mentor other team members, that is absolute gold. Because I think anybody can do a course in, you know, a boot camp in Python and machine learning and come out of it and be able to code, but this like deep understanding of what is actually going on is absolute key. The other really important skill that I think is this sort of proactive mindset. So what I was talking about before, so on the board level, that you would need to work individually with the different board members and understand their priorities. That should be also mimicked in your team, to sort of proactively go out and work with the counterparts in the different other parts of organizations, with different stakeholders, to understand how they can help them to sort of to help, you know, bring to help them make better decisions based on data. So I think this is really quite important. And in terms of the sort of the data unicorns, so sort of the best people that I've hired, the skills that are the hardest to find, but the ones that really elevate the team to the next level, in my experience, first of all, it should be a proactive self-starter. So proactive self-starters, they really sort of bring the team, like, you know, bring life to the team. And I've hired for junior positions, I've hired people who maybe didn't have a Python knowledge, for example, but they've shown that they were, you know, they knew other techniques, they knew other languages, and they had shown in the interviews that they could really, you know, get something and run with it and learn it themselves. And so I think that is that spirit needs to, you know, really be part of the team. Obviously, if you're looking for somebody who needs to be, you know, Python coder, then that wouldn't work. But if a position allows for learning and development on the job, that is perfect. And that curiosity and eager to learn and share is really, really important, because what happens is people who are curious, people who are like to learn, they also often like to share their knowledge. And so they'll be elevating your skills within the team higher, because they'll be sharing the knowledge with their teammates, but also they'll be learning, they'll be kind of bringing the stakeholders on the learning journey with them, because we know that we need to build trust in data. So we have to take the stakeholders on this learning journey. And people who are curious by nature and eager to learn, they're really good actually at bringing everyone on this learning journey with them. And I've hired those people, and they're absolutely brilliant. And understanding statistics and probabilities, as I said, like that is an absolute goal, depending on the size of the team, obviously, but you should have a certain percentage of people who have that understanding and spread that knowledge, because that really, really elevates the outputs. And then those people who have that understanding, they can come up with really creative solutions to the client problems. So I just wanted to bring in an example here of using proactive and sort of collaborative approach from my career. So this was from my days of working as a director on the Universal account with Essence Mediacom. So the problem that they have, the Universal Pictures, that obviously they run the movie campaigns, you know, campaigns that lead up to the release of the movie. They have lots of genres of movies, and they have lots of markets where they run those campaigns. But the campaigns are not run centrally. The campaigns are run by each sort of local team in those markets, and sort of the media teams use really their gut feeling in how they decide to spread the budgets, or sort of how they basically decide to distribute the spend of those campaigns. And sort of we went first with sort of trying to understand what is the stakeholder problems. And in many client meetings, the stakeholders have mentioned that they would like to understand, is there any pattern in like how the campaigns are being built, you know, and being planned? And is there any, you know, are they actually successful, you know? So this was their problem. And so we decided to proactively take a look at the available data, so all the campaigns that are available in the different markets, and we had that data, and we decided to try something new. So this was the technique with a very cool name, which is time series clustering with dynamic time warping, and it basically allows you to cluster the time series data together. And luckily, there were some patterns in the data. I'm not going to like sort of say what they are because it's client data, but basically we had 4 different groups of campaigns, 4 different genres and for different markets. And sort of we could describe them. And then what we did, instead of kind of developing the project further, once we had the first result that we could describe, we went back to the client. So we collaborated with the client and we said, look, we've developed this little project and these are the directions that we could take it into. So which of these directions would you like to look at? Do you want to look at the performance metrics? Do you want to look at the, spend by channel, by the media channel and so on? And sort of once the client, we had a big long workshop with the client. And as an outcome, we've agreed on the direction of the project. And we basically helped them to make sense of this large amount of quite messy data. And we laid the foundations of marketing campaign playbooks. So sort of saying, for the horror movies, these seem to be the most successful campaign of how do you spread the spend on them and so on. So this was kind of a proactive example of a proactive and collaborative approach. Further into data in the decision making. So in terms of the using the data in decision making, I have another example from Universal Pictures, and that concerns predictive analytics. But I just wanted to kind of highlight the tricky point of, this will apply to your data strategy. This will apply to trying to build the data culture. Or any large-scale data projects, that you will have multiple stakeholders, as I said before, with conflicting requirements. And how do you sort of address it in your project? And so the specific example that I have from my days, again, at leading the Universal account, was that we had a model that predicted the box office of the movie. So the weekend that it releases, that's the most important metrics for the movie companies. And so we had 2 groups of stakeholders. One was really keen on getting as accurate prediction as possible. They didn't care where the number came from. They just wanted low error. The other set of equally important stakeholders really wanted to understand where did actually the number came from. They didn't really care all that. Well, they cared obviously about the prediction error, but it was not a big factor. And so I have the picture there of the traditional guy trying to figure out how to get the wolf, the cabbage, and the goat across the river. So how do you get them all happy when they have such conflicted priorities? And what it boils down to in terms of the, in terms of the decisions that we had to do is it's minimizing prediction error versus being able to explain the model. And on one hand, we have sort of neural networks that can give you quite low error. They can give quite accurate predictions, but it's a black box. We can explain to the stakeholders sort of how they work, but we will never be able to say, oh, this number came because this and this and this factor played that role. On the other end of the spectrum, we have decision trees, which have quite a high error, but they're really easy to explain. They're just like a sort of a flow chart. So everyone can understand them with any kind of level of technical knowledge. And then we have also regression, which is still quite easy to explain. But again, the error is quite a bit higher compared to neural networks. And so what did we do? We kind of, we tried to go into the middle of that spectrum. And so we try to not just be stuck with one regression model. We try to increase minimize the prediction error while still maintaining the model explainability. So we tried to move it into the middle of that spectrum. So first of all, we didn't just agree on a set of predictors. We had a pool of predictors from which we chose the best one for a particular market and for a particular genre. And then we ran several types of regression models. So we ran the ordinary least squares, region, lasso. Some of them were linear, some of them were log linear. So it was basically running like a distribution of what we would end up with is a distribution of predictions. And then we chose the best one that has the smallest error metrics based on the previous previous predictions for the same market, for the same genre. And that prediction fed into a user-friendly dashboard, which then the users could go and sort of see which ones changed from week to week, what were the most important factors, and so on. And so how did we engage with the stakeholders? We generated predictions for the upcoming movies every week and communicated the insights with the media teams and our specific stakeholders. And what the outcome was, first of all, we reduced the error by half compared to the previous model. And we also saved about a day's work for the whole team, because everything was automated in the end. So we just kind of like run a line of code, and it did the whole sort of ETL and the whole modeling, and just spat the results out into the dashboard. And one of the examples that we have, of our actually really good success of predicting, we were really close on Megan in UK with, I think it was like less than 5% error, so like about 3% or so. So that was also the advent of the start of sort of ChatGPT back then. So that was that. But I covered it in about 5 minutes. But this process took probably about almost a year of negotiating with the stakeholders and agreeing on how this will all work out, and going back and forth on the prototype and so on. So but the result was quite good. So to kind of summarize what I was trying to convey here is, you really need to assess your board's level of understanding the data. So are you working in a tech company with people who are quite comfortable with data, for people who are sort of tech savvy and they have high trust in data? In that case, the world is yours. You can use whichever model is best suited for your question. So you can have your low error, you can use your LLMs, neural networks, whatever basically suits your question. However, if you're working with the more traditional board who have low trust in data, or when the majority of your board has low trust in data, you need to start with baby steps. So you need to start with descriptive statistics. You need to start with sort of building those use cases of when good decisions were made based on data. And you need to start with something that you can explain, so that people build that confidence in data. So that that's when you get to your, maybe they have a higher error, say decision chain regressions, but they're easy to explain, and that will really build your board's trust in the data. So the other sort of the last section, I just want to talk about how AI is the sort of the hype of the day, obviously. And quite a few organizations have high appetite with it, but I know that a lot of the legal departments are waking up and sort of trying to work out what are the boundaries in using AI. But I think a really good use of AI, in the use case of AI, is that every organization actually does some kind of reports that are quite repetitive. And this is the perfect use case for an AI automation. And in Spark Foundry, we are working on a project which is aimed to automate the post-campaign analysis reports, which every media agency has to produce. It basically, gives you a rundown of what happened in the campaign. And I just wanted to walk you through the steps of, producing those automated reports. And you will recognize those steps. First, you identify objectives and requirements, work with the stakeholders to understand what should go into those reports. Data collection and preparation, obviously collecting all the previous reports and the previous data. And I will not lie, we are right now, we're at this stage, but you know that it's the longest one. So then once we've done that, we will go into the design solution architecture. And this is where you want to talk to your legal department, obviously, because you need to understand whether you can use the open source LLMs or whether you need to build something yourself, and in which case you need to ensure that the hardware requirements are met. Then you develop the data processing and analysis structure, including reporting on specific KPIs. And this is where you probably want to go back to your stakeholders and ensure that everybody has been covered. generate visualizations, again, work closely with the stakeholders, automate report generation. And from then on, it's all good times. Deploy and QA, and then deploy and schedule automation. And then to sort of finish off, the question that I've seen a lot on the different panels and talks is, well, what's going to happen once the AI, will it take our jobs? Once we automate all the boring stuff, will we be out of jobs? And I say, let the AI take the boring stuff out of our daily life, because there is research, psychological research, that shows that when you're doing the sort of boring and mind-numbing tasks, it drains your energy. You're more tired. You have no energy to do something creative once you've been doing for hours, filling out some kind of Excel sheets or producing the same kind of graphs. So once AI takes this out of the, of our daily jobs, it will really free up time for thinking of more strategic projects and get more creative, and kind of people will have the energy to actually put in some non-standard insights to the reports and ask more interesting questions. So I'm an AI enthusiast, even though we're quite early stages with our report automation, but I think it will bring great stuff to everyone else. Thank you. We have quite a bit of time for questions, I think.
Oh, I forgot to turn the camera on when I came back on stage. But no, thank you, Masha. That was a fantastic presentation. Really loved your use of real life examples, and I hope everyone felt the same and managed to learn a lot. We've had a few questions come in, one on the chat and then a couple through private chat. But if anyone wants to ask their questions in the chat, I can make sure that Masha gets asked them very, very shortly. But the first question came in from Alex, and it says, what are some real world examples of great implementation of data strategy?
Well, I think the one in my examples, House of Commons, not a very good example. This was the early stages, I would say, of getting the data sort of to work. However, working with the Universal Pictures, I think they had a really good example of a analytics and data team that really talked to the rest of the the media teams and the rest of the business, and really trying to build that trust within the rest of the organizations, and actually quite successfully so. So I would say that they had the key element of being able to kind of find the good use cases and build the trust with their stakeholders. So I would say that is a good, I think that's a good, that's my one example that I can take off the top of my head. Yeah, does that answer your question, Alex? Don't know.
I think that would more than cover Alex's question. Yeah, another fantastic answer. Just ones that have come through the private chat. So this one's all around ethical use of data. So what are some of the best practices for ensuring ethical use of data? I know that's a big topic at the moment.
Yeah, so there is, I have sort of two examples, two views on the ethics, right? One is obviously being aware who collected the data, how was it collected, because there could be some sort of biases in the data. And so that is one kind of ethical angle of which we really need to be aware of, and at the stage of validating the data, digging into the data, really ensure that there are no inherent biases in the data. On the other angle of this question that I have kind of come across quite a bit is that our ethical duty as data professionals is to bring the answer that the data sort of gives and bring it to the table with an unbiased view. Because quite often when you work with any stakeholders, they already actually have an answer in their mind. And they kind of want you to bring the data that shows that, kind of pull the facts towards the argument. But I think we as data professionals, we need to come with that unbiased answer, and then work together with the stakeholders to understand why is it that they have that other answer in mind, and kind of how can we kind of combine what the data has brought with their gut feeling and come up with the best decision that's possible. So I think that's kind of that's my view on the ethics of a data professional.
Lovely, lovely. And we've actually got more questions flying in, so that's always good news. So there's a question come through the private chat. So it's, have you encountered any data sovereignty / intellectual property questions in your work?
Personally, I have not, to be honest. Oh, actually, no, we did have a dispute, like we did have it's often, I think it's quite often in the agency client type. Like I have not encountered them within an organization, but when you are working with like an agency, for example, is developing a product based on client data, right? So who owns that product, right? Is it the client? Is it the agency? But to be honest, and then we had quite a dispute actually with one of our clients, sort of, should the client see the code, or is it an IP? But my view is actually, and this is what we've gone back and forth with legal, and at the end of the day, we did give the code to the client. But to be perfectly honest with you, the person who wrote the code, if they're trying to defend that IP, it will be quite hard for someone. It can be hard for someone else to kind of go in and steal it and apply to something else quite often, because the person who wrote the code, they will know the ins and out of it a lot more. They should be documenting it quite well, but you can document enough while leaving some of the things sort of mysterious. So I think we have approached it with that way, that we've built the product, and it's I think it's a gray area basically, and you really need to go work with your legal and go on a case by case basis. But I kind of also think that since all the Python and everything is kind of open source, we can all where is the IP? I don't really know, but as I said, one coder can make it pretty much impossible for someone else to go and take it and use it for something else. So yeah, that's my sort of convoluted answer.
Thank you, Masha, and hopefully that answers your question. If you'd like a further follow-up, then please do let me know. But it looks like you did. An awesome thanks is the response. So yeah, and then we have another one coming on the public chat. So Laura asks, that conflicting data is very difficult to manage with stakeholders. What is your advice? Is it to agree on data sources, for example?
Yes, you absolutely. That is the kind of the first, like this, the second question. The first question that we ask is, what is your, what is it that you're after? What are your problems? That once we've agreed on that, we usually workshop with the client where we go through all of the sort of, all of the metrics that we're looking at, and then we agree on a data source. Because say in media agencies, you can look at different platforms will give you sort of slightly different metrics for the same, for the same question. So you really need to agree on the data sources with the client or with the stakeholders and be 100% crystal clear on that, because that is an absolute key. And you kind of like, once you've determined the questions, and then yes, that was a really good point, that you absolutely have to agree on the data sources. And if there are conflicting ones and you have your own opinion on which one should be used, always feel free to go with the recommendation, as long as it's like, laid out and founded. And you also can be transparent about the conflicting data source and say, this one says X, this one says Y. Which one do we go with? But it is really important to agree at the beginning on which one you go with.
Amazing. Hopefully that answers your question, Laura, and please feel free. But she says, thank you for reinforcing. So I think you two agree on that point, which is nice. And then this looks like the final question, but if you want to ask another one, please pop it in the chat or send it via private chat. I'll be able to see that one. The last one is, what are some examples of great implementation of data strategy?
Oh, I think I answer that one with the universal one. I think that was kind of, isn't this the same as the first one? I think it's quite similar of the implementation, but I would say that I think it's easy for me to think of the not so great examples of implementation of the data strategy, such as when analytics team seems separate and develops things without talking to the stakeholders. So the example of Universal that I've already brought in, where the data team was really working really closely with the agency, with the other stakeholders, and we kind of all collaborated. I think that was the best one. They got, and above all, they also had a brilliant laying out of the data and sharing the data with the right people, through the right channels. And it was that was a really, like, I would say that is another important point, is that when you have a very transparent and manageable data architecture, that is really key in your data strategy. And when the right people have the right access to the source, so you don't need to wait for access forever, that is another key, actually, to the successful implementation. So thank you again for that second question, because I forgot one more point of it. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Good to make sure we're covering off everything. But I said it was the last question, but Dario has actually just asked a question. So I think there's two questions here, but you can answer one at a time if you want. What's the best way of articulating and communicating a data strategy? And then the second one is, what are the key elements you must include in a document or presentation to make it easier for the whole organization to understand, I assume?
So the first one was about what is the best way to communicate a data strategy. And I think, I think you need to start with once you've gone through all those, stakeholder requirements and sources and timelines and everything, I would say it's really key to focus on what are we trying to achieve with our data strategy? And it needs to be really relatable to people, depending on who you're presenting to. If it's for the whole organization, that it needs to kind of drill it down from top to bottom. How is it related to, how will it impact their daily jobs, basically? How will it make their lives easier? And so I think that is focusing on why first, what are we trying to achieve with it, is really important, because then what are we going to do about it, and what is required, and all of that, I think that needs to come next, because I think for the buy-in, people need to see how will this affect them, because maybe you'll be switching, if your data strategy includes switching to a new data warehouse, or some new ways of working, of how people enter the data and so on, there might be some pushback. So you really need to manage that sort of change management piece. And also I would say be open. So when you've worked with on your data strategy, you probably would have worked with quite senior people, but I would say have some kind of surgeries and sessions with people from other, on all levels, so that they can actually feed in, because they might actually have some hands-on opinions and examples that will really enrich your data strategy. And the second question was about what
key elements do you need in a document or presentation to make it easier for the whole organization to understand?
Yes, well, I think that is kind of the same stuff that I said before. Is the why is really important. Why do we need it, and what's going to change, and how it's going to really focus on what is it going to bring for different levels of and different teams within the organization, right? Because as I said, organization as a whole, that's not there's no such thing. You have the different teams within it, and so you kind of need to address, I would say you almost need some kind of a slide for not necessarily each individual team, but the sort of the broader team of the organization, so that they feel that it's not just another initiative that's not gonna do anything, but it really relates to what they to their daily stuff, I would say. And then obviously include the changes that are coming, or and what's the impact, but really focus, I would say, on the why.
Perfect. I think that kind of covers off Dario's point. He said thanks, so it looks like you answered yet another question well. So yeah, but it looks like that's all the questions over and done with. Seems that we have given everyone all the knowledge, so that's a really good sign. But no, I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Masha. You've been amazing on this presentation. Some really good insights shared. Just a quick reminder: if you love data, if you love events, London Tech Leaders are hosting 3 events from September, October and November, all around the evolution of the modern CTO, a public sector focused event, and then we have a data event in November, which I'm sure will be of particular interest to everyone on this webinar. So make sure you come to that. You'll see me there. You might see Masha there as well, and then we can continue these conversations further along. But thanks everyone so much for your time, and we'll see you very, very soon. There is a link in the chat to the data event. Look at that. Alex reminded me. So yeah, now you guys can find that event and put it in your diaries. Have a great day, guys, and we'll speak to everyone soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.